NASA completed a critical step Thursday for its Artemis program, paving the way to send the first woman and the next man to the moon. Joining me now, acting NASA Administrator Steve Jurczyk. Steve, wow, congratulations on this hot fire test of the SLS rocket. That's the Space Launch System, the big rocket, absolutely massive. I believe the biggest NASA has ever built, or its contractors have ever built. First of all, explain to folks who don't know what a hot fire test is, what it is, and why it's so important.
Yeah, so the hot fire test was the first time that we started up all 4 engines and ran them for 8 minutes on the core stage, or the first stage of the Space Launch System. So it was a critical test for proving out that the system can complete the first flight, which is Artemis 1, and it's the first uncrewed flight test of the vehicle. So this was a tremendous milestone in moving forward with our Artemis programs, which is aimed at landing the first woman and the next man on the moon. This time we're going back to the moon sustainably to stay, and we're going to use the moon as a proving ground for eventually human missions to Mars.
So when do we think this rocket is actually going to fly?
So right now, the target date to launch the uncrewed flight test is November of this year. It'll be challenging with COVID, and we had 8 named storms come in the Gulf that disrupted preparations for the test and some technical issues. It'll be challenging, but I still think we can launch Artemis 1 by the end of this calendar year.
Wow, that's great to hear. So let's talk about the other big news this week at NASA. The Biden administration, President Biden, formally nominating his pick to be the next NASA administrator. It's former Florida Senator Bill Nelson, who, of course, flew on a space shuttle back in 1986. He's been a huge champion of the space program for many, many years during his decades on Capitol Hill. And I want to just share with you a small piece of the statement that President Biden put out yesterday about why he chose to nominate Bill Nelson. He said most every piece of space and science law has had his imprint. In the Senate, he was known as the go-to senator for our nation's space program. Steve, explain why it's so important to have a NASA administrator that has such strong connections, not just to the president, but also to how Capitol Hill works. I mean, it's pretty critical when you're trying to get all these budgets passed, which is what NASA really needs, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So the way the process works is the president proposes a budget, but Congress then takes that proposal and actually passes the budget. And so it's really important to have that really good relationship with the administration, including the president and vice president, as well as our Authorizing and Appropriations Committee and their staff on Capitol Hill. What we do takes years and decades. And so having that continued support over a fairly large period of time with the budgets that support the goals and objectives for the agency is super important and critical for us being successful to do the amazing research, technology development, and missions that we have planned for the nation.
Well, Steve, you've gotten vocal support from the Biden administration that they are going to keep the Artemis program intact. They've said they like it. They said they want to stick with it. So that's some great news. As you know, a lot of these programs do not survive a presidential transition. But in order for Artemis to really thrive, the president has to allocate enough funding for it in his budget. Do you think that he's going to do that?
Yeah, you know, so far we've gotten very strong support for the Artemis programs and our goals and objectives from the Biden-Harris administration. I can't talk about budget details right now because we're in the process of establishing the president's budget request for FY22, which will probably go into the April-May timeframe, which is typical for a transition year. But so far, we've gotten a lot of support, not only from the administration, but also our F-121 appropriations from Congress showed excellent support for all our programs, including Artemis.
All right. Well, that's good to hear. Let's hope that money stays in there. Steve, thank you so much, and congrats again.
Hey, thank you.